Yes, doctor. We are live now, doctor.
Okay, thank you. So, good evening, everyone. So, warm welcome to all of you for this first webinar of the Platinum Jubilee Year. So, on behalf of Tamil Nadu Ophthalmic Association, I welcome all of you to this evening session. And it's indeed a great pleasure and privilege to be part of this association. And thank you all so much for the trust and confidence in us. So a few snippets from the Trichy conference. So those of you who have missed this, it was a wonderful 3 days of science, fun, academics, the official meetings of TNOA, and a wonderful banquet. Thanks to the Tricon 23 organizing team. Particularly, I should thank the organizing chairman and organizing secretary, Dr. Parthiban and Dr. Sriram, and the young TOPS team for the wonderful effort. So on behalf of TNOA, thank you all so much. And to thank the entire managing committee, particularly our immediate past president, Dr. R.K. sir, for the wonderful work done. And also happy to welcome Dr. Sujata Mohan, our new Vice President, to the Managing Committee as well as to Team TNOA. So good teams become great ones when we trust each other and work together. And hopefully this 1 year will be a memorable one for all of us. And we should also thank all the past president and leaders of TNOA for giving us this platform and showing us the way and building this association to this shape. And this is our team TNOA who will be leading these initiatives in the Platinum Jubilee Year. So we had Tamil Nadu smiling and TNOA shining. And then we had synergy through unity. Together we can. And now it's time for towards excellence. So together we grow towards excellence in eye care. So this is the theme for the TNOA Platinum Jubilee Year. And so this would be our logo. And we did had a few interaction with all our members, and all our initiatives have been based on these interactions and expectation from each and every one of the TNOA member. So these were some of the highlights and demands from our members: academic updates, skill development, and be our voice in insurance and advocacy matters. And one of the key areas were medical legal issues, and of course some common member concern. So Team TNOA, we would like to focus on these top 10 initiatives. And so this is the core of my presidential address. So promoting quality and safety in eye care, leadership development through our academic and research committee, leadership in academics, leadership in professional life and association life, and advocacy initiatives to ease the practice scenario, training and education, of course, focus on our Tamil language, insurance issues, networking and collaboration with other associations, and support for young ophthalmologists, and of course, member wellness and medical legal committee. So with this in mind, we are starting our first initiative through the medical legal committee to empower our members and to give confidence to making the right move in the ophthalmic practice. So this is an overview of the program. So before I hand over the session to the chairperson and moderators, so we have lined up few programs for you. So just a brief on what's coming up. So we are having an eye donation fortnight. So our academic team will take the initiative to commemorate the National Eye Donation Fortnight. And our TNOA Young Ophthalmologist Task Force is working on another session on innovations. So this will be on 31st August. So this again will be on a Thursday. So this we are working out this initiative with the help of MRF Center for Innovation, as well as this Young Ophthalmologist Task Force headed by Nishant and Prasanna. And the next initiative would be on the promoting quality and infection control initiatives. So this we have started work with this quality and infection control committee headed by Dr. Chandrasekhar. So we're planning a infection control one-day session in association with Coimbatore Society of Ophthalmic Surgeons on 17th of September at Radisson Blue Hotel, Coimbatore. And Tamil committee, you all know, we released a wonderful Tamil translation on the consents. So thanks to the Medical Legal Committee as well as TNOA Tamil Committee members, Nandri. And so this was released during the inaugural session at Trichy. So this book will be updated, the soft copy will be updated in our website, and hard copies will take some time, but it will reach you soon with all the corrections in place. The TNOA Insurance Committee, headed by Dr. VPS and Madan, is working on few challenges that affects us with reference to the insurance. We are meeting on 20th at Shankar Nethralaya to discuss and take this initiative forward. We're also having a pilot session on understanding the health insurance and how we can train our hospital staff on this. So we are aligned with the MediAssist, and senior people from MediAssist coming to train or discuss with our staff. So this will be a pilot project. Once the training program is on, we'll invite all hospitals to be part of this training session. So let's shape the future of ophthalmology and continue to restore sight and hope. So together we grow. Thank you so much once again for joining us. And I take this opportunity to invite our immediate past president, Dr. R.K. sir, to share a few words.
Yeah, thank you, Nirmal. Respected President Dr. Nirmal and past President Dr. Thangavelu, Vice President Dr. Jata, and Chairman of this today's session, that is Medical Legal Foundation of Ophthalmology, Dr. R.D. Ravindran, and Convener Dr. Murali and Satyan, and my dear friends and managing committee members. Warm good evening to all of you. At the outset, I would like to congratulate our new President, Dr. Nirmal, and also I wish him all the best. And the way in which he started the first session today is really is something different from whatever we did in past. Medical legal, insurance, and quality, infection control, something like it's different, which is not well covered in the past. In the past, we were focusing more on the clinical aspect. But this is also very, very important, because with the increasing awareness and expectation of the patient, this type of medical legal problem is coming up every day. Nobody can escape this, even for a smaller discomfort or something like that. The patients doing so much of demand and going for legal this thing, and some of our friends more every day getting this type of problem. So to address this, and also to how to face, suppose if you have some such problem in our day-to-day practice, definitely this webinar will be a much more useful one, because there is no textbook or anything which can do all these things, which is now we have a wonderful speaker for this session. Definitely the session will be much useful for all of us, and also it's a very platform to share their experiences and also clear their doubts also. That's really is very good. And also Dr. President also has got an online this thing, so that anybody can contact at any time, and they can go up with their grievance and do all the work. Definitely I'm very happy, and once again congratulate Dr. Nirmal for this wonderful new ideas and the field of purpose. Thank you, Dr. Nirmal.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you for your kind words. I request Dr. Sujata Mohan, our new Vice President, to say a few words. Ma'am, unmute yourself, ma'am.
Thank you, Dr. Nirmal, and good evening, everybody. It's really a pride and privilege to be part of this wonderful group, and I'm so happy to be here. And having seen the list of topics that you have suggested for the whole year, I think it's going to be a very illuminating and rewarding year. And I know from the past that your credentials show that it's going to be a wonderful year, and I'm going to be really happy being part of it. And I would like to lay down my support in whatever way I can, so that we can definitely grow together and towards excellence. Thank you once again, Dr. Nirmal, and thanks to all the TNOA members for imposing their faith in me. Thank you.
Thank you, madam. Have a quick word from the advisor, Dr. Thangavelu, and then I request Dr. RDR sir to take over the proceedings and guide us.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you, Nirmal, asking me to say a few words. First of all, I must congratulate the team. Very beautiful team you have with you to support you and whatever you wanted to, whatever you imagine to do. And I think you'll be able to achieve all what you have listed down. Definitely you will achieve. At this forum, I must say that I have learned a lot from Nirmal and hope everybody benefits the same way as I have benefited from Dr. Nirmal in the administrative part of it, insurance part of it, IMA, and so many other accounting part of it. It's a lot of things. There's a list is endless. So now today's topic is very interesting. Challenges there in all walks of life. In practice, there are many. And most of the time, the medical legal aspects are neglected by all of us. We think that we are above the law. No, we are not above the law. We are scientifically and technically very sound. The rules and regulations are changing in all fields, not only in medicine. In all fields, they keep changing. Even in the law, it is changing. So we are no exception. Let us hear the speakers and fall in line with the land of the law. Thank you, Nirmal and the team. Wish all the very best. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. And so it's my privilege to introduce and welcome Dr. R.D. Ravindran sir. Sir doesn't need any introduction to this audience. Dr. R.D. Ravindran sir is the chairman of the largest eye care system in the world, Aravind Eye Care System. Sir has really cooperated and come forward to help us in many of the initiatives. The first initiative we started work was on medical legal committee, and Dr. Murli Ariga, who also has a degree in law, apart from his expertise in glaucoma, has also taken a lot of effort to form this committee. So I welcome both of them. Dr. RDR sir, over to you. Kindly take over and lead us into the webinar. Sir, unmute, sir.
Please unmute, Ravi.
Thanks, Nirmal, for the kind introduction. It's really an honor and a privilege to chair the first session under the presidentship of Dr. Nirmal. Dr. Nirmal has taken the Together We Grow Towards Excellence in Eye Care as a theme for his presidentship. I would like to really congratulate him on taking up this goal, and he also got a clear vision as to how he wants to execute it. And the people who were there during the inaugural session would have heard the 10 points he spoke elaborately as to how he plans to achieve that. I'm very sure that with the planning he has done, he also gave a preview of what is about to come in the next 12 months. I congratulate him and also his team all the success. So with this, we move on to today's topic, which is one of the goals of Dr. Nirmal, which is about how we will help the TNOA members to navigate all the medical legal issues which we face in our day-to-day ophthalmic care. And as all of you, all the other speakers mentioned, the number of issues which are rising out of our patient interaction is slowly increasing. And for people who have gone to these consumer courts, you'll see at least 1/3 to 40%, 35 to 40% of the cases all relate to doctors or the hospitals or healthcare institutions. And that is the level of the problem we are facing. And it's important that we are aware of certain norms, protocol, processes which we need to follow, so that we are able to not get into this. And towards that, we have several speakers. And Dr. Nirmal Frederick has formed a team, and this is the first part of the team's work is to create this awareness. And he'll be talking, and followed by, we will have 4 other talks. So with this, I'll hand over to Dr. Murali Ariga and Dr. Satyan to take forward the proceedings.
Thank you, sir, and welcome all of you to the webinar which we have planned today. And as you already heard, I think we have a lot of issues with regards to the practice and practice related to medical legal issues. There's a changing environment which we're seeing new laws, new imposition of conditions, and so many things which we have not understood, and so many things which we may not be aware. So just we have to bring it to the notice of our members regarding the practice patterns, regarding the new laws, and so on. And I also invite on board my co-moderator for the session, Dr. Satyan, who was a president of the IMA in Coimbatore, and also a legal expert. And he's going to moderate the session along with me. He's also going to speak on consent today. And besides that, I also welcome our advocate panel, Mr. Rajendran and Mrs. Janani Shankar. Both are practicing advocates and who have a knowledge of medical practice and litigations and so on. Especially Mr. Rajendran is a PPLSS advocate for so many years, and it's got a wide experience in handling PPLS cases. So with this very brief background, I think we'll get started without delaying the session much. I think our first speaker for the day is Dr. Nirmal Frederick.
Yeah, thank you, Murali. So many members asked about how do we approach the committee and whom to approach, what is the contact number, and a few other details, how they will help and in what way they will help. So I thought, so this first introduction will be about what we are planning to do. So things that happen but can't predict. So it's one of them is a legal issue in our practice. We can't predict, but we can prepare somehow. So at present, as our chairman said, the healthcare professional go through a lot of legal complexities. Even a few days back, there was a new Gazette notification. So many of them are known to us, and many of them are very difficult to follow. A lot of ambiguity in that. So we have formed this TNOA Medicolegal Committee with Dr. Murali Ariga as the chairperson and Dr. Satyan as the convener, with 5 members who have interest in medical legal aspect from various sectors and background. So the members are Dr. V. Madhavan, our past secretary, Dr. Sudhir from Shankar Netralaya, Dr. Sendil Kumar, Dr. Subhashni, and Dr. Balasubramaniam. And we have the advisory panel, medical advisory panel, Dr. Adi Ravindran sir, Dr. T.N. Ravishankar, who also heads the IMA legal committee, and Dr. K. Sendil Kumar from Trichy. And we also have the expertise of 2 advocates, Mrs. Janani Shankar, an advocate from Chennai, and a senior advocate of PPLSS, Mr. Rajendran. So I really thank all of them for consenting to be part of our initiative. And the ex officio members would be the executive committee, including our past president, Dr. R.K. sir, myself, Dr. Arul sir, Dr. Sriram, and Dr. Balaji. So this is the formation and composition of the committee. And so what would be our responsibilities and methodology? Basically to develop certain guidelines and policies towards medical legal challenges, and assist TNOA members in navigating the medical legal issues when it happens. So one first part is the training of our members, and second is to advise and help if there is a crisis, and also take risk mitigation measures like professional indemnity. So basically to empower our members and inspire confidence in this. So each office bearer will have certain roles and responsibilities. So this will be put up, handed over to the committee chairman as well as the secretariat. So they will align with this. So basically provide legal advice and support. So the first level legal advice on ophthalmology matters, because other lawyers may not be aware of the ophthalmology core issues. So this is our first level legal advisory support. And then of course, educational programs like this webinar, workshop, and if there are any new regulations, so update on our members, and also advise on indemnity and ethical consideration. We will collaborate with legal experts as well as the existing framework like PPLSS and the indemnity legal team if you have one indemnity. And if there are any complaints and grievances, we'll advise the TNOA members accordingly on the medical legal matters. So this is the framework. So how do you approach the advisory committee? So basically, please don't phone call, because all our members are busy professionals. So I would request members to, if you have any need for advice or if you have a medical legal challenge, please write an email with full information, evidence, objective evidence and reports to the convener and chairman of the medical legal committee. Mark a copy to the president and secretary. All this information will be updated in our website. But please allow some timeline, because all of us are working and busy professionals. So if there is a crisis, immediate or emergency need, so contact your, so we will also ensure that there is a district affiliate society. So there are already 17 district society affiliated to TNOA. So you can reach out to one of them and they can in turn contact us, or you can always reach out to the president and secretary. So then you can escalate to the committee through the regulatory mechanism. So this is how the advisory committee will work. So not over WhatsApp messages or phone call. So we need to have some documentation and proper mechanism to reach out to us. So with this information, so this webinar is basically the part one. So where when we were formulating this webinar came the new Gazette notification on the amendments to the National Medical Commission. So Dr. Murli Ariga will be talking to us about that. So and then we can have so a lot of questions and discussions on this in the social media as well as among the doctor circle. I'm sure this will be an interesting topic. So if there are anything that can be done through TNOA and through Medical Legal Committee, we'll take it up. So over to you, Murli. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Nirmal, and I think it's a very wonderful introduction. I think we have the way forward and we have the path clearly illuminated as to how a member can approach the TNOA, how we can take things forward, and what is the clear role of each of the members and advisors of the Medical Legal Committee itself. So it's very clearly outlined so that there's no ambiguity or confusion in whom to approach and what is the role of each of our committee members. With this in mind, I think I'm going to get started on the very interesting topic, which is now the hot topic of the last few weeks. I think you're all aware. I'll start to share my screen. And this is the topic for the day, navigating medical legal frontiers in our practice, from the Medical Legal Committee of the TNOA. And the new regulations which have come in from the National Medical Commission, and its implications seem to be affecting us on a day-to-day, either from the news item or from WhatsApp messages or from hospital groups or our own interest groups. We seem to have different bits and pieces coming in from everywhere, and we don't really have a clear picture as to how it changes our practice and how it is going to affect us as we move along in our practice with regards to day-to-day practice, day-to-day prescriptions, day-to-day interactions with patients, colleagues, peers, and our conferences and so on. So all of this I'm going to cover in brief. I'm going to give you a very brief overview and an outline of the new NMC regulations. And I think you may all be aware that as we have understood that why are we also concerned about the health, and why is the government so concerned about health being important, and why doctors become important as providers of health and healthcare, is that the basic premise of the health is that it's a right to health, is a fundamental right. And this is recognized as a fundamental right under Article 21 of the Constitution, which is right to life and personal liberty. So the principle of bodily autonomy is enshrined within Article 21. Therefore, whenever we're dealing with a fundamental right, the entire picture changes and we have to sort of follow what is the law. We cannot, that is why the health becomes an important subject, and the government has the right, has the prerogative to do and impose laws which ensure the good health of its citizens. However you can interpret it. The interpretation of health comes in through life and liberty, but basically it's a fundamental right coming under Article 21 of the Constitution, which is why somebody may say a chartered accountant does not have the same ethics and regulations, an advocate may not have the same strict regulations, and some other profession like engineering does not have the same profession. Why are we so regulated? Which is because we are dealing with a fundamental right. We can take it as a right as well as a privilege. So how is our profession actually regulated? So we have something called as a professional regulatory bodies, and earlier it was the Medical Council of India. I think you all know it was dissolved, and now we have the National Medical Commission called the NMC, and the NMC is in charge of UG medical education, PG medical education, medical assessment and the rating board, and you also have the ethics and the medical registration board, which is what I'm going to broadly talk about today. The four of these boards are autonomous boards, and the one which concerns us most as far as practitioners are concerned is the ethics and medical registration. I'm not going to talk about NEET, NEXT, and PG education and assessment and so on. So the mission and vision as it is from the website of the NMC is stated to be to improve access to quality and affordable medical education. The education is priority to ensure availability of high quality medical professions in all parts of our country, to promote equitable universal health care that encourages community health perspective and makes the services of medical professions accessible to all citizens, encourage medical professionals to adopt the latest medical research in their work and also contribute to research, to objectively assess medical institutions periodically in a transparent manner, maintain a medical register for India at an all India level, enforce high ethical standards in all aspects of medical services, and have an effective grievance redressal system for the public as well as for peers and other professionals who are dealing with healthcare. So this is the vision and mission of the NMC. All of the NMC mission and vision basically applies to registered medical practitioners who practice allopathy. And this is as far as our profession is concerned. There are independent boards which deal with non-Ayush and other things. I'm not going to deal with that today. So the ethical regulations as it stood in 2002, this was the Indian Medical Council Act and the ethical regulations of 2002. There was some framework and there was some understanding of the code of medical ethics, the duties of physicians to patients in consultation to each other, duties to the public and to the paramedical teamwork and professions and so on. There used to be some amendment and modifications regarding advertisement, pharma company gifts and commissions and cutbacks and so on. All this was all patchwork and it was not in a properly laid out till recently. So you will be surprised to see that after 20 years of the ethical regulations in 2002, we have the new one which has now come out in 2023, which was just released and gazetted in the Gazette of India on 2nd of August. And exercises the powers of the NMC Act of 2019. There are 5 chapters under the new NMC notification, the National Medical Commission notification, called as the Ethics and Medical Registration Board, 5 chapters. And each of the chapters deals with certain aspects of our practice and duties and responsibilities. So chapter 1, I've just outlined the salient points alone. It's very difficult for me to explain all of this because the entire gazette and the notification is in 2 languages and runs to about 125 pages. So it's not possible to discuss it in 10 minutes, but I'm going to give you an outline. The suffix and modern medicine, basically it means that you need to have initials after your degree, like MD or MS or DNB and whatever else you add as a fellowship. It must be a suffix which is recognized by the National Medical Council. You cannot add alphabets and FIMCA, FACP, and all kinds of things which most of our fellow practitioners in different specialties do that. And there has to be a continuous professional development program, the CPD, in which you need to accumulate about 30 credit hours in about 5-year time. And there's a particular way in which it can be done. So how we're already doing it now, it is becoming more rationalized, and the guidelines are quite clear. And also no soliciting of patients, no advertising of any kind. And we need to start writing all our prescriptions, preferably the generic, only generic medicines have to be written. We should avoid writing the brands and generic brands of companies. There should be no fee splitting. There should be no commissions given to entice and bring in patients, no product or person endorsements. The sale of drugs from a practitioner should be no open pharmacies. For example, I can have a pharmacy in my hospital or store, in my premises, which should not be an open pharmacy dispensing cardiology drugs or neurology drugs and so on. Just for example, I said that. So no open pharmacy. And the IP records for medical records should be maintained for a minimum of 3 years. And of course, informed consent, I think Dr. Satyan is going to speak to you in detail about that. So this is chapter 1. And the biggest challenge here on what is new in our practice is the use of generic medicines. So use of generics, is it a boon or a bane? I think we have been discussing and talking about this in various forums so far, And it seems to be that what the NMC has done is to, as the IMA recent press release says, that they have launched several trains without tracks. All the trains have been launched without the basic framework being done. So we don't really have generics for all kinds of medicines. We don't have combinations, multivitamins, all kinds of things. How do you decide which generic to write and so on? So there's a very strongly worded IMA press release, which I think all of you might have seen. I think as a professional organization like the TNOA and the AOS, I think we need to take it up at the earliest and address this issue of writing to the NMC, bringing forward the issues which we face in writing generics alone and as compared to generic brand. So this actually shifts the onus of drug choice to the pharmacy. Suppose you write ciprofloxacin, you write the latanoprost. The patient goes to the pharmacy and the pharmacist decides, does he give Xalaton or does he give Zolumigan or does he give some other antibiotic and so on. Everything becomes the pharmacist's choice. The doctor, who's the primary treating doctor, has no choice in this with regards to the government's sort of initiative is maybe honorable in the sense they want to avoid the out-of-pocket expenditure and reduce cost of healthcare. That could be a honorable intention. But the way they have gone about it and imposing it on practitioners does seem to be unreasonable. The next notification in chapter 2 talks about the duties of medical practitioners towards their patients in keeping appointments and sticking to time, having a good referral for people whom you do not handle as a subspecialty or a cross referrals, the ethics of cross referrals, confidentiality of keeping data to yourself and not disclosing identity and patient details to people who are not involved in the care, truth telling, patient care. You're free to choose a patient for treatment except in emergencies. And the notification about signatures, the name of the practitioner, the medical registration, this has to be clear in all the notes you write, all the prescriptions you write, all the certificates you issue, all the orders that are written, the discharge summaries, and even in the receipts. So this is the new notification that even receipts must have the name and registration number and so on. And the telemedicine guidelines, Telemedicine Act is already in place. There's a mention of the telemedicine guidelines again in addition to all of this in chapter 2. How do you choose a patient for treatment? In a non-emergency, the patient walks in, and once you accept a patient for treatment, there's a contract between you and the patient. You have to provide the treatment, complete the treatment. But as a single physician, as a patient, you have a choice of not accepting somebody for treatment if it is a non-emergency. But when there's an emergency, which is actually yet to be defined by our own professional bodies, by law, we are bound to treat to the best of our ability, in good faith, reasonable care, a prompt referral when you don't handle those kind of patients, and no monetary consideration should be there when you're treating an emergency. These are the Honorable Supreme Court guidelines for emergencies. But the problem is the patient can feel that he's got an acute headache of 25 days and comes in today and says, I have to be seen immediately. Or he has a redness for 2 weeks and says this is an emergency. So the emergency actually has to be decided by our association. We have to decide what is the emergency. There is no clear definition of what is an emergency, which is why it becomes a gray area. I think you must have all heard of the right to health agitation in Rajasthan, in which the government said that anybody with an emergency has to be treated by any hospital free of cost. Then they withdrew the notification to only government centers and so on. So it is now impractical kind of things keep coming in. So we need to be on our guard and decide to choose a patient only if it is, and choose or not to choose only when there's a non-emergent situation. The chapter 3 deals with the responsibility of the practitioners to each other, professional integrity, no rivalry, no competition between practitioners. And suppose you are on leave, you're hiring somebody else to take care of you. All those are described in what is called as locum jobs and so on. The most important thing here, which is probably very important to us in our practice, is reporting and inspection to avoid derogatory marks about diagnosis of treatment or treatment being done by somebody else. A casual comment or a casual description of, oh, somebody did that. Oh, is that the way this was operated upon? Those kind of things go a long way in the patient's confidence about you and the other practitioner, and brings down our profession in the eye of the public. So better we avoid derogatory remarks and reserve your comments until you have a clear picture of what the patient's problem is all about. Chapter 4 deals with duties of the practitioners towards public and allied health professionals. Public education and awareness, we must indulge in, we must take care of educating the public about common diseases, common problems like eye donation, glaucoma awareness, diabetic retinopathy, and everything else. This is a very important aspect of what the practitioner should do. And of course, the importance of teamwork with paramedical staff like nurses, technicians, and all of your people who work with you is also very clearly spelled out as allied healthcare professionals. And there's a clause 35 in chapter 4, which is the biggest challenge to our profession today. So I've spelled out the entire clause 35 here, which comes in chapter 4, page number 74 of the Gazette. I will read it out because every line and every word seems to be important in this. Registered medical practitioners and their families, mind you, families mean sons, daughters, husband, wife, the relatives, distant relatives, must not receive any gift, travel facility, hospitality, cash or monetary grants, consultancy fee, or even a honorarium, or access to entertainment, recreation, movie tickets, pharma companies and their representatives, commercial healthcare establishments, medical device companies, corporate hospitals under any pretext, which means that literally you cannot accept anything from anybody who deals with anything with healthcare. However, this does not apply to people who are employed by the organizations. RMP should not be involved in any third-party educational activity, be it a speaker, be it a delegate, be it a chairperson, whether it's a webinar, seminar, workshop, symposium, conference, involves direct or indirect sponsorship from pharma companies or the allied health sector. This was not there in the previous ethical regulations, which didn't mention about direct, indirect. So the onus is on you to decide, has the sponsorship come from direct or indirect from a pharma company or health sector? If you are aligned with this in any way, you are liable for professional misconduct, being pulled up for misconduct. The RMP should also be aware of the conflict of interest. You should become aware of conflict of interest. So the nature of these relationships should be in public domain, even clinical drug trials, and should not be in contravention of any law, rule, or regulation in force. So himself or herself as part of any society, organization, trust, etc., make a relationship with the pharmaceutical and allied health industry clear, transparent, and open to scrutiny, which means that we are literally under the magnifying lens as far as dealing with these kind of situations, and we have to be on our guard. And this is a lot of things to be discussed about how to take this forward and understand this. And all our conferences, where all we take pharma support with regards to attending or a speaker or a delegate, CMEs, webinars, a big question mark as to how we're going to proceed further in this. We have to have a clear understanding of how this goes forward. The chapter 5 is on professional misconduct. And this is again quite stringent as compared to the previous 2002 regulations. The complaint procedure can now become online. So anybody can complain online. And there was no earlier suo motu cognizance. Somebody has to bring it to the notice of the medical council. Now the NMC can actually take suo motu cognizance of some problem or misconduct within 2 years of its occurrence. The manner of inquiry can be conducted by the National Medical Commission, the way in which it is formulated in the notification. And there is no lawyer at any stage. The NMC does not work with any lawyer who can represent to the NMC. All of this is done by the NMC, and you have to deal with it on a direct basis. Complaint disposal is quite clearly mentioned as the levels of how it deals with the complaint. penalties are level 1 to level 5, with alternative penalties also being provided, such as counseling the practitioner, giving some extra training and understanding of what he has not done correctly and so on, he or she has not done. It starts from a 30-day suspension to 3-year suspension and even a permanent revoking of the license. The power of the State Medical Council, the EMRB and the National Medical Council is the same as in a civil court, and an appeal is possible within 60 days. So mind you, they have the power of the civil court to summon you, summon a witness, summon anything else with regards to providing reports and evidence and so on, like in the Evidence Act and so on. So an appeal is possible, but they have the powers of a civil court. The Ethics and Medical Registration Board also has the power to draft guidelines and codes. There are various annexures for telemedicine and so on, how to write generic drugs and how to give a prescription, how to go about accreditation and conducting the CME, CPD, professional development programs, telemedicine guidelines, the penalties for misconduct, advertisement guidelines, end-of-life care, research by medical practitioners, and social media conduct, and how to provide reasonable skill and care in your practices. And I'm going to stop with this particular aspect of which concerns all of us in our day-to-day life. As you can see, none of us can exist without looking at the phone. Maybe every half an hour, some of us will look into every 20 minutes, we look into our WhatsApp, some message, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, whatever else you have in mind. There's so many of them, and it's a very important marketing tool for most of our practitioners and many of our friends, colleagues, and so on. The broad principles of medical ethics is applicable on social media as well. This is from the ethical board. You have to be truthful, respectful, but professional. You have to distinguish between telemedicine versus social media. So what you talk on social media with regards to your treatment and videos and talking about some particular kind of method of treatment or instrument or gadget or IOL is not the same as how you provide on telemedicine. You have to very clearly differentiate social media versus telemedicine. Provide clear information, not to mislead, exploit, or be deceptive. Refrain from sharing images, videos of cured patients or showing impressive results. Not to share testimonials or reviews. Not to solicit patients directly or indirectly. And the last one is the most important, actually, in my opinion, is not to purchase likes. For example, you search for somebody in a particular area. The first doctor that shows up on the list is not necessarily the most popular. He would have paid the highest amount with regards to the company which runs the app or the website and so on. So this purchasing of likes or to be listed in paid search apps and websites that list the names first is definitely a no as far as the new ethics and guidelines are concerned. So all of you must be aware of the social media conduct of all of our practices. So this is an article which I saw recently in one of the newspapers, that it used to be a noble profession and we used to cherish being a doctor. And being a doctor once, say 2-3 decades ago, we used to take pride in taking up a profession which used to be honorable. So is that now a once cherished dream is now broken, or do you really encourage your children and people around you to become doctors? And it says, doctor, you're the apostle of honesty and integrity. And the society expects you to have exceptional moral and social behavior from you because you're dealing with healthcare. You're also like a god, so you can't have the liberty to make mistakes. So you have to be error-proof and foolproof, and you have to provide the best all the time. Is that possible? Is that the challenge which you're all going to face? Let us see what other panelists are going to say. Thank you all for listening. Dr. Adia, sir?
Yeah. So we will go on to the next presentation by Dr. J. Senthil Kumar. He is going to talk about medico-legal challenges, solutions through standards.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Dr. Senthil Kumar is a practicing ophthalmologist from Cheyar. You're going to have a presentation. You're sharing your slides.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I'm just looking into it.
Yeah. And he is also very active in the IMA. So
Is it,
Just to make a comment on Murali's talk.
Yeah.
When he presented about this NMC regulations, it can be easily downloaded, and it will be good to know if each one of us can print that English part of it. It comes to about 65, 70 pages. I think it is worthwhile because going forward, government is going to enforce these rules and regulations.
every word seems to be important, sir.
Important, and it's I think we need to be aware of it.
It has opened
Not
up
only
Pandora's box.
Yeah.
My worry is how they are going to implement, whether it is going to be uniform implementation or selective implementation. And the media is going to go crazy with all these things because it's widely published. And if you see, every media is publishing selectively their version and their interpretation of the new Gazette notification. Sandil, any problem?
Yes, sir. There is a difficulty in sharing the screen. Should I go to share screen or do something?
Yeah. You need to
Go to
share
share
screen
and then keep your presentation open, and then after that to do the share screen.
That is there, sir.
Yeah.
Sir, visible now?
Not yet.
Yeah, we don't see the slides, but we can see your screen.
So, Sandil, you can stop sharing and then open the PPT and then again share.
Sir, is it visible now, sir?
No, your screen is visible, but the PPT has not yet come.
No, Sandil, yeah, not yet visible.
Okay. So,
have you got the open PPT on your computer?
Yes, sir.
It's open. Yeah. I think the biggest challenge for us would be with regards to conducting CME programs and conferences. So we had a local IMA meeting recently in which some pharma company and a local lab were also involved. All the IMA members refused to attend because of the fear of saying that you attended as a delegate or as a speaker and you have a pharma company there, and the entire meeting had to be sort of abandoned in a hurry because it was nobody had a clear picture as to whether to attend, whether to speak, or whether to take part or not. So I think this kind of confusion is going to come, and how are we going to conduct our monthly, weekly, and our state conferences and everything else is.
So that is a dilemma now. So there are a lot of clarity needed in the interpretation, because whatever was there in the ethical guidelines before now has become a statutory and mandatory requirement.
With penalty.
With penalty. So that is where the problem comes. Yeah. And how they're going to implement. My doubt is with so much standardization and the interpretation of standards, we are unable to keep up with the implementation part in many hospitals. And across India, how are they going to implement with 4.5 lakh doctors and with so many variable institutions and framework? So it's very, very going to be a difficult scenario in the next few months, at least, until there is clarity. So one is the generic drug. So our framework, Sendil, let me know when you are ready.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
If you're ready, you can start sharing. So in the meantime, we will keep talking. Yeah, we can keep discussing. The issue about generics is also something like a double-edged weapon in which we do feel that we are going to save costs for a patient. We have serious issues. I think we have ourselves done many studies which show that the quality of the drug is spurious. We don't really know the efficacy is good or not. Its availability across different parts, which pharma company is actually making the drug. We have heard of lubricants causing death in the US. They're all the generic lubricants which have gone on to cause even fatalities in patients. So with this kind of quality of generics, and how do we ensure quality? How do you make sure it's available? And how does a patient decide which generic to take from a pharmacist who has only two? He can have a nexus with only two companies and take only the ones who give him the maximum cut or commission.
Is it visible?
It's visible. Please proceed.
Yes, sir. Good evening, sir. First, I would like to thank our TNOA President, Dr. Nirmal Frederick, sir, and TNOA office bearers, Dr. Murli sir, for giving me this opportunity. The topic given is medico-legal challenges and solutions through standards or journey through crisis. So the challenge what we faced is basically the outcome of treatment. If the outcome of treatment is good, we don't face any challenges. So the outcome of treatment obviously is based on the disease and the patient adhering to our treatment. So there are various acts and challenges what we are facing daily. The biggest problem with the profession is we are not following any one single standard or guideline, because there are a lot of standards. For example, NMC standards and Clinical Establishment Act standards, and standards by voluntary accreditation bodies, and standards what we maintain for insurance companies. It goes on. So when the topic is given to me, when I ask some of my colleagues in our ophthalmic fraternity and IMA colleagues, what they are most bothered about is Consumer Protection Act, criminal negligence, lawyer notices, court notice, Medical Council and Disciplinary Act, that's a new NMC Act, arrest by police, Clinical Establishment Act, and obtaining various licenses and renewal. These are the various challenges faced by most of our practitioners. So let us see one by one. So what are the various licenses? What we have to get is fire safety license. Of course, based on the size of the hospital, based on the accreditation body, and whether it is a clinic or nursing home board or hospital, fire safety license, building stability license, biomedical waste license, pollution control board license, lift license, license for a generator, pharmacy license, food safety license, ESI, Provident Fund, Minimal Wages Act, and certification of stamp for weighing machines. So regarding Consumer Protection Act, it's an act to provide the protection of the interest of consumers and for the set purpose to establish authorities for timely and effective administration and settlement of consumer disputes and for matters concerned therewith or incidental thereto. So here the service means service of any description which is made available to potential users and includes but not limited to few things. But it does not include rendering of any service free of charge or under a contract of personal service. The second part is the medical negligence, which is much bothersome. So negligence is the breach of a duty caused by the omission to do something by a reasonable man guided by those considerations which ordinarily regulate the conduct of human affairs would, or doing something which a prudent and reasonable man would not do. It's by the R.C. Lahoti judgment in Supreme Court 2005 CRI LJ 3710. So the negligence can be of three types. It's a criminal negligence, civil negligence, and medical negligence as per our Clinical Protection Act or NMC guidelines. Criminal is gross proved negligence, whereas civil negligence is less than gross but more than simple. So civil or criminal negligence, the essential components of negligence are three: duty, breach, and resulting damage. So I'm just making this slide to understand regarding the resulting damage. Cause of action for negligence arises only when damage occurs. So for an act to amount to criminal negligence, the degree of negligence should be much higher, gross or of a very high degree. So in criminal law, it is not the amount of damage, but the amount and degree of negligence that is determinative of liability. This is the concern with criminal negligence. A person is not liable in negligence because someone else of greater skill and knowledge would have prescribed different treatment or operated in a different way. This is a judgment given by Lahoti, which safeguards us. So the other areas of concern are whenever we receive a lawyer notice, Then we go into a stress or panic situation. Let us see what has to be done whenever we receive a lawyer notice. So similarly, when court notice is received, a reply has to be given through a lawyer within 45 days of receiving the notice or as directed by the court. With regard to medical counsel, criminal negligence may be due to medical records not maintained for 3 years, and when a copy of a treatment is not provided to a patient or authorized representative after a request within 72 hours, when the display of registration number accorded by state medical council is not done, adultery or improper conduct, a medical practitioner shall not contravene the provisions of drugs and cosmetic acts and regulations made thereunder, like prescribing steroids or psychotropic drugs without absolute medical indication, selling a Schedule H and L drug and poisons to public except his patients. With regard to advertisement, a physician should not contribute to the lay press articles and give interviews regarding diseases and treatments which may have the effect of advertising himself or soliciting practices, but is open to write to the lay press under his own name on matters of public health and hygiene living. Like Sarah said, there are a lot of other things like should not use scouts or agents for procuring patients. And the one important thing is a physician shall not claim to be a specialist unless he has a special qualification in that branch. So the rules and regulations of medical council at that time was being framed, and now Sarah has taken these are into effect. NMC guidelines are into effect. The National Medical Register contains all the entries of the registered medical practitioners of all state register maintained by the State Medical Council. Grant of license to practice medicine is obtained after applying through web portal of Ethics and Medical Registration Board. On approval of application by State Medical Council, the same shall be reflected in the National Medical Register and also in State Medical Register. License to practice shall be valid for a period of 5 years, after which medical practitioner shall have to renew the license by making an application to the State Medical Council as per procedure. Application has to be made before 3 months of expiration of validity. So these are one set of guidelines which we have to follow. And the other thing is Clinical Establishment Act, which varies from state to state. For us, with regard to Tamil Nadu, Clinical Establishment Act, there are few guidelines which are given to us. So once we are aware of the guidelines and standards, so my topic is, in a nutshell, is like applying the standards and following the guidelines, whatever NMC and CE has given, like what our Murli sir has told and what is given in Clinical Establishment Act. If we could follow everything, each and everything, without thinking that as a trouble, then this topic actually doesn't even arise. The need for this topic doesn't even arise. But in areas where there is like negligence, which is falsely claimed by the public, or lawyer notice by a lawyer, these are the areas where we should be aware of certain guidelines. So in Clinical Establishment Act, on receipt of an application for registration of clinical establishment, competent authority, after satisfying itself, fulfills all the requirements of the Act and rules, grant a certificate in Form 11 within 80 days from the date of receipt of application. This application is non-transferable. So we should display a copy of the certificate of registration, maintain records in electronic forms showing name, address, and qualification of its employees and equipments maintained by it, maintain clinical records of its activities relating to patient, keep every record open for inspection by the competent authority. So for clinic, we need a consulting room of 100 square feet with sufficient light and ventilation. We need to keep the records. Register should have details regarding the name, age, sex, and address of the patient, date of examination, and date of admission. The patient shall be given a slip containing the name, age, sex, and date of consultation, diagnosis, provisional, whether it is fine, whether diagnosis is provisional or final, and treatment advice and any investigation if undertaken. For a clinic, a sufficient space for 2 cots shall be available for keeping the patient under observation in case of anaphylaxis or giving IV drip or for observation. Minimal of a staff and a paramedical staff. Waste disposal as per Pollution Control Board norms, and dispensation of medicine by a qualified pharmacist or by the doctor of clinic under direct supervision. For polyclinics, separate cubicles shall be made available to each specialty if they attend simultaneously. And waiting room and safe drinking water should be made available. In a hospital, additional waiting room for patients for the number of outpatients visiting the hospital should be made. Ward should be spacious with ventilation and light. Electric fans to each room and 1 fan for at least 2 beds. Toilets has to be clean and water provisions should be made available. Cleaning arrangements to the ward with antiseptic lotion should be available. 1 qualified doctor for every 30 beds is a mandatory. 1 duty room for every 20 rooms with the necessary equipments like oxygen, saline, etc. 1 doctor should be on call duty up to 30 beds during the night and off-duty hours. Ambulance is desirable if the hospital has more than 100 beds with a driver or tie up with another hospital having ambulance or with any other service unit. With regard to record keeping, with NMC guidelines, we had seen we have to keep it for 3 years. Here, the period of should be not less than 10 years. And patient daily statement of patient health and condition has to be mentioned in it. Details of investigation, surgical operations carried out, treatment given should be maintained. Record of all prescriptions and report with the name and qualification of doctor is compulsory. Retaining of medico-legal case record is in accordance with the government order. Mortuary room with freezer box is mandatory for more than 100-bed hospital. And hospital should also have firefighting equipments, quality assurance system, generator, emergency drugs, OT, which has to be at least 100 square feet, air conditioner, UV lamp, and in CEA, modular OT with HEPA filter is not made mandatory. Formalization of OT and swab for culture has to be done monthly. This point is more important for us because in negligence, the onus lies on the patient to prove that doctor is negligent. But in case if there is an infection for a patient who has operated, the onus lies on us that we have to maintain the record that culture has been done monthly and it is free of divide of organisms. So problems are many. At the same time, there are few standards, there are few areas which safeguards us. So let's get into that. Ministry of Law and Justice with regard to Consumer Protection Act has stated the Act of Parliament received the assent of President on 9th August 2019. So healthcare is dropped from Consumer Protection Act. With regard to criminal negligence, it's the level of skill is not always set at a higher level. It's the level of skill is a competent person exercising ordinary skill in that profession that is judged by the lowest standard that would be regarded as acceptable. Anything less than that has to be proved by the patient. Statutory rules or executive instructions incorporating guidelines by governments in consultation with Medical Council of India has to be followed for medical negligence with regard to criminal prosecutions. So, like stated earlier, when we receive a lawyer notice, need not panic, just receive the notice, acknowledge it by sending a letter stating that proper reply will be given within a specified time, as specified in the letter. And there are various schemes, like our TNOA PPLS scheme of IMA Tamil Nadu, which helps us when we receive a lawyer notice. The only thing is we should submit all the necessary documents properly and within the proper frame of time. And I need to mention that 95% of the cases, even though we think that these things are mentally disturbing, 95% of cases are one with proper documentation, provided proper documentation is given after proper reply is given to the advocate itself. The rest 5% cases are lost because of improper documentation and consent not properly obtained. Police inquiry or arrest, a private complaint may not be entertained unless the complaint has produced prima facie evidence before the court in form of credible opinion given by another competent doctor. A doctor accused of negligence may not be arrested in a routine manner unless his arrest is necessary for furthering the investigation or for collecting evidence, or if the officer feels satisfied and he has to prove that the doctor proceeded against would not make himself available for prosecution unless arrested. Act of prohibit violence against medical service persons and damage to loss of damage or loss to property of medical services institutions and for matters concerned. In Tamil Nadu, it is the Tamil Nadu Medical Service Person and Medical Service Institutions Prevention of Violence and Damage or Loss to Property Act 2008. That's the Hospital Protection Act. It is deemed to come into force on 18th July 2008. So to conclude, to overcome the problems, adherence to mandatory norms by government or accreditation bodies or insurance companies, if we had empaneled with, is must. Availability of functioning CCTV in acceptable places of hospital. Formation of crisis management committee with local IMA branch or adjacent ophthalmic association. Communication to the members at the time of crisis is more important. Restriction of crowd with the help of security or local police at the time of crisis. Mock drill for violent behavior of patients, that's code gray, or mock drill for code blue, medical emergencies, code red, fire emergencies, and child missing, code pink, can be done at frequent intervals to overcome these problems or to behave in a coordinated way at the time of problems is a must. Proper record maintenance and safety of records is important. I'm not getting into the details of consent because other speaker is going to tell about that, but I wish to mention certain points. The proper consent has to be obtained by the surgeon and the anesthetist. Details of procedure, alternative, and benefits also need to be included in it. Most of us include only all the risk factors, and usage of reusable items, if any, has to be mentioned in it. So prescription which are given to us has to be given in a proper format. The minimum prescriptions requirements given in a prescriptions are legible handwriting, name, sex, age, and weight of the patient, clinical diagnosis, investigations, if any, advised, drug name, dose, frequency, number of days to be followed, follow-up date, signature with name and date of name of the consultant and date. Relevant investigations to be done before surgery has to be done, like B scan before cataract surgery in a mature cataract, because if it is not done, that accounts to criminal negligence. Follow association guidelines for procedures, example, cataract surgery guidelines given by AAOS, and discharge summary has to be proper. It should involve all the medications that has to be followed with the dose, route, and number of days, post-op advice given, follow-up date, emergency conditions, what are the emergency conditions which we can expect, and contact number. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Senthil, and very clearly you have explained what is absolutely necessary as far as a practitioner for us to stay safe in our practices, and the minimal requirements as far as the legal compliance with our hospital and all aspects of maintaining the theater and all that. I think your NABH experience shows as an assessor as well as a inspector of hospitals. I think ensuring quality standards will definitely go a long way in ensuring compliance with the law as well. Without wasting much time, I now request my co-moderator and co-convener of the Medical Legal Committee, Dr. Satyan, to speak on the various aspects of consent in ophthalmic practice, with a particular relevance to ophthalmic practice.
Thank you, sir. I will. I thank Nirmal sir. Sir, I am audible. My screen is there.
Yeah, yes, Satya.
Yes.
Yes, Satyan. Audible.
Thank you, sir. I thank our TNOA President, Dr. Nirmal sir, and my chairman of Medical Legal Committee, Murali Ariga sir, and our senior advisor, Dr. Adya sir, for giving me this opportunity. I'm here to talk about consent in medical practice. So it's nothing but an agreement, compliance, or a permission given voluntarily without any compulsion. Very, very important. In medical practice, it refers to willingness of person to a subject to of a person to subject himself for examination, investigation, treatment. So it's much more important. Consent is much more important than your skill set. You are no more a god. So people doesn't previously I used to see doctors in white and white considered as a god. Now it is not so. So you have to be very, very careful, and you have to document everything, whether it is in the case sheet or in the procedure in the form of consent form. So consent as such started in Nuremberg Code in 1947 after World War II, Declaration of Helsinki, then Indian Contract Act 1872. So type of consents, it can be implied or expressed. Expressed can be of verbal or oral, written or informed, a blanket or third party. In this, the blanket has a overall coverage of diagnosis, treatment, extra additional procedure, everything, but it is not legally valid. So it is no more followed. Third party is concerned with the children less than 12 years, where whether there is a if there is no parent, then the local guardian, the person who is taking care of the kid, becomes a third party. So the implied consent given automatically by the patient by the virtue of his action. So by just walking into your clinic, he implies a consent for you to examine him and give him the diagnosis. So patient presents himself at doctor clinic or outpatient department, implies that he is agreeing to be examined. So it can be ranging from an ear examination to a dental examination to eye examination to a blood pressure checkup, everything. So it includes procedures like inspection, palpation, percussion, and auscultation. And or if a patient goes to a lab, rolls up his sleeve for blood sample, that itself is an implied consent. So if you have a documented evidence of a video evidence of a patient rolling his sleeves for a blood sample to be taken, it's a form of an implied consent, but not for any interventional or surgical procedures. So expressed consent, mostly verbal or oral, specifically stated by the patient on his own language, for relatively for minor examinations or therapeutic procedures. But the law states that it has to be that procedure or examination has to be performed in the presence of disinterested parties like a nurse, any one nurse, male or female, based on the sex of the patient. You have to have them close by for any rectal or vaginal examinations. In our practice, duct syringing, applanation tonometer, this all includes, comes under verbal consent, and test dose, withdrawal of blood for evaluation. So coming to written consent for all major diagnostic and therapeutic procedures like surgery and anesthesia, there should be a written informed consent, and also needed for participation in medical research. It has to be in vernacular language. So if you are in Tamil Nadu, you have to have an English and Tamil. And if that patient doesn't know Tamil, then you have to have one in English and one in their mother tongue, if mostly. So it should explain about the nature of the procedure, what is the treatment required, what is the rehabilitation. A complete set has to be informed to the patient prior to any surgery or anesthesia. So doctrine of informed consent, patient understanding of the following is must. Condition or nature of illness, very, very important. Purpose or nature of procedure or treatment proposed. So what is the purpose, whether it is needed or not needed. Risk and benefits of the treatment of the procedure, very, very important. And if you have a regular printed consent forms, If risk is not mentioned in a printed form, then you have to write it in that consent form and get a signature for that. Risk and benefits of alternative treatment, if there is any, and prospects of success or failure, means prognosis has to be explained. Outcome of vision, outcome of the procedure has to be explained clearly. Prognosis in the absence of intervention should also be examined. Like in case of phacomathic or phacolytic glaucoma, what would happen if you don't intervene or if you don't do a cataract surgery or a combined procedure? So they have to be explained about the prognosis in the absence of intervention. And acceptance or refusal, informed refusal should also be documented of a set procedure and intervention, and refusal has to be documented, very, very important. So informed consent is like this picture where A, B, C, D, then it goes across about the benefits, harms, risk, and you have to be very clear in what you have to say. And you, very important thing is you should not miss important procedure related risk and benefits associated with it. So age of consenting, children less than 12 years of age, consent is invalid under section 90 of IPC. Parent or guardian or person who's in whose custody he is she can give a consent. Children between 12 to 18 years of age, effective consent is valid. But when it comes to a medical legal case, then the court will examine effective consent and determines the level of understanding. And if there is a medical legal case associated with that procedure in this age group, then the level of understanding is examined by the court. And based on that, the negligence can be denied or proved, whichever way it is. And anybody above the age of 18 or more than 18 years of age, any person with sound mind, very, very important, is can give their consent for a procedure. So consent in emergencies under section 92 of IPC, failure to get consent during medical emergency will not amount to battery. So it has clearly stated that you need, if life is at stake and it has to, the procedure has to be done, consent is not necessary. Medical and not legal consideration are important life-threatening situations, and only there is a conditions apply that only when procedures during medical emergencies performed during medical emergencies are absolutely necessary. Only when you think it is absolutely necessary, or if there is a medical legal case, the court has to decide or the medical panel has to decide whether the procedure is absolutely necessary or not. Do take a written opinion from an expert colleague within your hospital or a visiting consultant in case you have you feel there is a risk of medical legal issues, and signature from the next of kin possible, or a police or a hospital in charge if possible is mandatory. So this is a case between Dr. T.T. Thomas versus Elisa, Srimati Elisa in Kerala High Court, where Thomas had a patient with acute appendicitis. He informed the patient and the attendant that he needs an immediate surgery and asked for a consent. The patient refused to give a consent, and patient died in due course because of the complication associated with acute appendicitis. Then the Elisa filed a medical legal suit, and Dr. Thomas was liable because he didn't document that the patient didn't give consent. So refusal of consent was not documented by the doctor or the team. So he was penalized for this. So if patient is refusing consent and if you are not treating them and anything happens after that, refusal of consent has to be documented in your medical records. So rule of consent: free, voluntary, clear, intelligent, informed, direct, and personal. Ideally in his own handwriting if something specific has to be mentioned. Consent has to be procedure specific and person specific. Person specific meaning it is specific to the patient and to the doctor. One doctor getting a consent for a specific procedure and somebody else should not operate for it. We have a lot of ghost surgeons who visit and do cataract surgeries for other practitioners. So it should be doctor specific and patient specific. So very, very important. And when 2 or more procedures are performed, consent for each procedure is must. So when you are planning for a PKP or a DALC or DSEC with cataract surgery, you have to get a consent for cataract surgery. You have to get a consent for corneal procedures too. Separate consent for blood transfusion, even if there is a consent for the surgical procedure. Do not delegate the job to junior staff or a non-clinical person. It is either by you or one of the senior most clinical staffs. An insane, intoxicated persons unable to attend the nature and the consequence, unable to understand the nature and the consequence, consent is valid. Consent is invalid if you even get it from them. And this is, I was saying about when 2 or more procedures are procedure specific. There is one case which was ruled in Supreme Court. Samira Kohli and Dr. Prabha. See, the consent was obtained for diagnostic laparotomy, and hysterectomy with oophorectomy was done. So, but that was beneficial for the patient, but the consent is only for the diagnostic procedures. So it is not valid for the therapeutic one. So it has to be procedure specific for either it is diagnostic procedure or a therapeutic procedure. It has to be very clear. So consent of spouse is not necessary for any treatment other than performing a sterilization surgery where there is a risk of loss of fertility. So, and one other thing is section 92 of IPC deals with case of emergency, state that any harm caused to a person in a good faith, even without person consent, is not an offense. So if you are in an emergency, if you are doing a procedure, something happens, it is not an offense, it doesn't amount to battery. Under section 53 of criminal penal code, an accused can be examined by a doctor by using reasonable force if requested by the police officer. So following Kerala, that junior doctor death, there are some modification in this law too. Then organ donation, will of the deceased is enough to retrieve the organs from them, and consent of this amounts to corneal transplant or eyeball retrieval, everything. So will of the deceased is enough, or the consent of the relatives is enough, and consent of recipient who receives that cornea or the part of a cornea or a sclera is must. So consent is invalid if it is not an informed consent, if it is not a detailed consent, obtained by misrepresentation or a fraud or a threat or a violence, or obtained under sedation, failure to give proper information about the procedure, outcome, risk, benefits, alternative procedures, etc. So no legal capacity to give it, a minor or an insane person, but still you get it, then it becomes invalid. Given for committing a crime or an illegal act, such as criminal abortion, different procedure, different physicians, it becomes invalid. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Satyan. I think a very clear aspect of the consent process. Who has to give the consent? How do you get the consent? The legal aspects, the legal implication of being specific for procedure, for anesthesia. If there's more than one procedure, you must take separate consents. I think all of us have to understand that. If you're doing more than one procedure, the other procedure has to be documented, has to have all aspects of the information about the procedure, the alternatives, the common complications, and if you don't do the treatment, what are the consequences of not treating, and also highlighted that the patient refuses a treatment, that also has to be documented. Very, very clear. And I say thanks Satyan for the wonderful talk. I think we can, we'll move on to the next talk, sir. Dr. Adia, any comments, sir?
No, nothing specific. Murali, we would like to congratulate Satyan for all the work he has done to produce this consent forms in Tamil. So, which about our president also. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
And I request Dr. Subhashini to present her talk on indemnity and how we can protect ourselves with regards to professional indemnity cover.
Good evening, everybody, and thanks for the opportunity. I hope I'm audible.
Yeah.
Yeah, please go ahead.
My screen is visible now.
Not yet.
Not yet.
While you're getting ready, I could probably
Yeah.
request our advocate on the panel today, Mr. Rajendran and Mrs. Janani, to comment on the consent process and the legal implication of doing something with consent or without proper consent, and what is the legal implication. Mrs. Janani?
Good evening, everybody. Am I audible?
Yeah, you are. Thank you. First of all, thank you for sitting through the session on ophthalmic procedures and also talking the legal aspects of our practice.
Thank you, Doctor. I'm happy to be part of this group. I think you're doing a very great job of enlightening medical legal issues. With regard to consent, I think consent is a very core aspect of medical legal issues. I think every step of the way will have to be documented very carefully, because as we have seen in the case laws which doctors have presented earlier, what is important is for consent, each of the steps will have to be explained to the patient, and the fact that you have actually explained will have to be documented. And all of these consents are based on information that you share with the patient. So there is always a risk of the patient claiming that a certain procedure was not explained properly, or a certain significance of not having the procedure administered was not explained, the cost of it. So each of these aspects is something that will have to be communicated very clearly to the patient. And the fact that you've communicated that will also have to be documented. So consent is a fulcrum of how you are going to sort of protect yourself tomorrow in case the patient should raise any claims of medical negligence against the doctor. And I think even the new guidelines has set out a very detailed framework on how the consent will have to be obtained. So I think it's quite detailed. So I think it's something that's very important and all of us will have to be aware of.
Thank you. And we will continue with the talks, and I request Dr. Subhashini to start her talk.
Now my screen is being shared, right?
Yeah, you can go to
make it slideshow.
Yes, okay. So shielding your practice, we have to shield our practice as much as we practice. So we are going to discuss about the risk cover strategies here. And what is professional indemnity? Indemnity for medical practitioner is an insurance policy which covers doctors for legal fee incurred and damages paid for claims or demands raised by third parties alleging professional negligence. So what is medical negligence? An act of commission or omission or an unintentional negligence by a medical practitioner during diagnosis or treatment of the patient, which results in bodily injury, illness, sickness, adversities, or death of the patient. So who will need professional indemnity? We are now living in a litigious era, and there was a recent a survey conducted recently in National Law University, Bangalore, where the results are really surprising. There has been an whopping 400% increase in medical legal cases of late. And to our surprise, the only 15% of these cases are genuine, where the medicos were genuinely involved in negligence. And most of that is 85% of the cases were because of patients' unrealistic expectations regarding complete health recovery after paying high medical expenses. And some are due to patient anxiety and limited understanding of the technical details of the case. Only 15%, as I said, are genuine cases of where or negligence. Out of these, the majority of cases are due to improper consent from relatives before performing a certain procedure or switching hospitals or inadequate information regarding the plan or procedure. So who will need? Independent doctors, medical professionals, medical establishments like hospitals, independent clinics and nursing homes, support staff employed by all the above institutions. Put simply, the main reason why you need a professional indemnity cover is it has your back if a client claims you that you don't do your job properly. So to err is human, after all, we are all humans. Patients are not our friends forever. They would worship you as God if everything goes well, but if something goes wrong, you'll be in the soup. Terms and conditions in consent forms are not always enough. So what does the policy normally cover? It covers the compensation for claims arising out of bodily injury or death, which is not a result of willful neglect, unintentional negligence while rendering the professional services, liability including defense costs incurred while investigations, third-party damages, breach of confidentiality, libel and slander, loss of documents. It is very important to understand what it does not cover. Punitive and exemplary damages, fines and penalties, pure financial losses, any criminal act, violation of any law and ordinance, losses arising due to an act of war, terrorism, invasion, losses arising due to fraudulent claims and contractual liability, services while under influence of intoxicants, narcotics, liability arising out of pure cosmetic procedures like weight loss, plastic surgery, genetic damages, etc., intentional non-compliance, willful neglect, deliberate acts, loss of goodwill, losses arising due to insolvency, bankruptcy, any condition related to HIV or HTLV virus, practice without valid registration or certificate, administration of prohibited drugs, contravention of government acts, etc., unauthorized illegal experimentation and procedures. So what is the sum assured? It refers to the limit of indemnity. It is generally based on specialty, whether you are a surgeon or a non-surgeon, what is the type of clientele you have, and what is the size and volume of your practice. This limit is fixed per accident and per policy period, which is called AOA limit or AOY limit, respectively, and will be offered and recommended usually as ratio of 1:1. The premium is generally 0.2% to 1% of the sum insured, and it is calculated based on two main factors: past history of any litigation, legal cases in his or her areas of expertise. Any one accident denotes the maximum liability in case of any one accident in the policy period. This is very important. And any 1 year is the limit on maximum amount payable in the entire policy period based on the ratio chosen by the proposer. The predetermined limits of indemnity in various ratios can be chosen. Example, 1:1, 1:2, 1:3, etc. For example, 1:1 means maximum liability and the sum assured are equal, and 1:2 means maximum liability will be equal to half of the sum assured. Any other claim during the same policy period will get the other half. Duration of the policy is 1 year, that is 12 months, which needs to be renewed every year for continuous risk cover. So how to select the product? Choose sufficient sum insured, choose comprehensive cover with all extensions, get retroactive date coverage in case of renewal, check the mode of payment available, seek clarity about claims processes. There is something you should understand about this retroactive date. This is the date when the policy is taken for first time, and this date remains the same if the policy is renewed without any break. It gives the continuity benefit, and if there is any change in terms of coverage, limits of jurisdiction, then the retroactive date for such changes needs to be changed. The implication of this date is that any loss after this date can be considered, provided it satisfies the other requirements of claims reporting as well as scope of cover, and there has been a continuous insurance cover without any break. So when to lodge a claim? Insured should immediately lodge a claim once he is in receipt of a complaint, written demand, or a legal notice from a third party related to their professional negligence with their insurance company. So the documents to be submitted when lodging a claim are the duly filled and signed claim form, copy of the policy document, any court notice or summons receipt, original proof of cost incurred on defending any lawsuit, court order or any written proof specifying the settlement amount, bank details of the policyholder for sending reimbursement, additional documents required by the insurer based on the nature of the claim. The claim settlement process takes place in 3 simple steps: the claim intimation, document submission, and claim settlement. The claim gets rejected under these following grounds: violation of any laws, rules, and regulations, performing services under the influence of alcohol or toxic substances, claims reported in current policy but arising out of procedures or treatment performed before retroactive date, non-disclosure of any material facts like claims history, proven intentional negligence. So we should know about this IME PPLSS, the Professional Protection Linked Social Security Scheme. This is meant for individual life members of IMA and not for institutions. Currently, there are 8,500 to 9,000 members are there, and 987 MLC cases are given, case IDs as on date. Thanks for the information, Dr. Satyam. IME PPLSS, the protocol is the concerned doctor informs the local IMA or district coordinator within 10 days after receiving the notice. Original case sheets with relevant documents given to the PPLSS medical legal team, case IDs generated. The doctor concerned will oblige the directives given by the PPLSS to fight the case. So the subscription, actually, the amount varies among between the categories from general practitioner to non-surgical to surgical, or the procedure-oriented specialties like anesthesia. So there are 2 slabs: compensation in 10 lakhs and 20 lakhs. Accordingly, the subscription amount will also vary, and this is for a block of 5 years. And this is about the PPLSS renewal again for a block of 5 years. And so coming to the differences between the PPLSS and the indemnity insurance, the subscription is definitely cheaper for a block of 5 years, and indemnity is definitely expensive, and it is an annual premium to be paid. The coverage will be maximum 20 lakhs in IMA, and it is up to 1 crore. Claim ratio is always 1:1 in IMA PPLSS, and it is variable based on the ratio chosen by the proposer. The medico-legal team with lawyers will help us in backing the case, and we have to guide the lawyers in case of indemnity insurance. And the lawyer's focus is on doctor reputation, whereas in indemnity insurance, the focus is on reducing the compensation. The settlement is done by doctor, and PPLSS reimburses the doctor, whereas in indemnity insurance, the insurance company settles the compensation directly to the court. It only pays for cases filed in courts, forums, and commissions, not for out-of-court settlements. If the doctor has an additional indemnity cover, only the balance will be settled by the PPLSS. And there is a clause that if the management committee agrees, the out-of-court settlement, if the case is still pending in the court, the member accepts to pay the 50% of the compensation. Remaining will be paid by the PPLSS for out-of-court settlement. So it makes you to shade your defensive practice and best defense in the offensive society. The coverage is from day 1 of enrollment, and guidance and safeguarding from day 1 of receiving notice. So now, what is hospital indemnity and vicarious liability? Hospital's liability with respect to medical negligence can be a direct liability or a vicarious liability. Direct liability is the deficiency of the hospital itself in providing a safe and suitable environment for treatment as promised. Whereas the vicarious liability means the liability of an employer for the negligent act of its employees. So the complex legal relationship between the hospitals, doctors, and paramedics lead to issues which the courts find it difficult to resolve. So we need some kind of a standardization. There is a need to provide competent care based on a national standard. The state has to intervene with state statutes and regulations to ensure that standard of practice is established in hospitals. The hospital has both a vicarious as well as an inherent duty of care to its patients. The statutory regulations result in doctors being involved directly in setting of standards. This brings a separate liability upon the doctors, independent of their professional liability. There is a demand not only for establishing initial standards of care, but for continuous monitoring of these standards and proactive measures to ensure that they are all updated. The best example would be the NABH accreditation process and the renewal processes. So the hospital protection scheme offered by IMA, this is the chart showing the subscription details. The scheme will take up notices and cases against the hospitals enrolled and pay the compensation awarded against hospital, but not against individual doctors. The hospitals are requested to ensure that all the consultants and duty doctors are enrolled as members of PPLS scheme so that the entire notice of case can be taken and fought collectively. The hospital should be members of IMA Nursing Home Board. So I wind up my presentation with the last slide. I hope I covered everything.
Thank you, Dr. Subhashini. And I think we have to understand that for those of us who don't take adequate cover, who were under the false impression that we don't need professional cover, we are all safe and we are dealing with good patients and nobody is going to litigate against us. I think we really need to take care that once I heard a symposium in Delhi from the Delhi Medical Council, the registrar, he was saying that every patient you can assume to be a litigant. Take precautions, make sure that your practice is adequately covered. Don't take small amounts of indemnity so that you can expect that the claims for compensation are increasing. So make sure you take adequate cover and join hands and be part of associations such as the IMA PPLSS. And I think it's very, very important to understand and take adequate cover depending on the risk perception and so on. We do have an eminent panel with us today. We have Dr. Sudhir, Dr. Madhavan, and Dr. D. Chandrasekhar. And I'm now going to request Dr. Sudhir, who is actually a consultant and a lead for the medical records department of Shankanetralaya, one of the best maintained records in this part of the world. And I request comments from Dr. Sudhir regards to record keeping and what should be the minimum standards for maintaining records in our practice.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me to be part of this group. And as we look into all these standards, I think if we start implementing all the standards, I think it will not be able to see all the patients, first of all. So we need to work out what are the minimal requirements for each of them, even for the consenting process or for maintaining the documentation. So probably we need to work out some of the commonest simple things are documenting the name. That is the first small important thing, which we started seeing in many cases. Patients are not giving the proper names. So we need to even have a proper names registration at the registration counter. So these are small things which we come in. So patients.
Let us look at your, you have set the standards for records and documentation at a very, very high level. So what should a practitioner at say single practitioner clinic in a hospital do? Should he go in for digitization of records? How is this prescription record should be digitized? And what is your recommendation?
Yeah, so when we look into digitization and maintaining the records, the individual practitioners, I think many of them not even maintain the records. I think we need to start looking at how to maintain those records at the first level. So there are certain techniques which can be used. There are certain things like digital writing pads, where you can give the prescription or whatever findings which you are giving to the patient, you're documented and you can store it in your records. These are the at least a minimum thing where you can store a copy of it. Whereas when you come to a high level standards, I think it will be very difficult for me to put them all together. Probably we can work out in a different setup where we can look into all the standards. How do we need to document from the registration to the up to the action plan and documentation of the findings?
I think as we have a clear path ahead of us, maybe the next year or so, as to what should be the minimum standards which complies with the law as far as documentation is concerned. I think we're going to take your inputs regarding this, and we go forward, and we're going to take it forward in the form of a newsletter for all our members as to what is the minimum standards for documentation and what a practitioner must absolutely do with regards to being safe in practice. And of course, going higher up in terms of quality and in terms of higher levels of documentation is welcome, but what is the minimum standards is what we're going to ensure with your help. I now request Dr. Madhavan, who is here, to talk about the indemnity cover, which he would ensure in his area.
Thank you, sir, for your for all the nice inputs that we received today. So documentation would seem to be the only mantra that could save us, and preemptive nature of our activities should save us from any requirement for indemnity cover. But now, in this age of litigations, the number of litigations that we see all around, with gynae and ortho being the number one, but ophthal not far behind. So we require indemnity both in terms of IMA-related indemnity cover as well as a private indemnity. The IMA indemnity cover in the form of PPLSS gives us around 20 lakhs for an individual doctor, while because some put cases not only against the doctor but also against the institution. So we require cover under the hospital protection scheme as well, which will be taken care of by PPLSS. So PPLSS gives both cover as well as good legal support and mental support during this crisis hours. While a private indemnity cover would help us to increase our support base from 20 lakhs to say around 1 crore. Because nowadays, in the previous days, the number of cases at the district level, then the state level, the national level. The district level had about 10 lakh, then state level had 20, and the national had 1 crore. But now even the district level itself has 1 crore judgment against medical practitioners. And so, however our practice may be, the minimum cover should be 20 lakhs from PPLSS, a cover from HPS, and about 1 crore from private indemnity cover.
Thank you, Dr. Madhav.
We should safeguard our savings through practice and not lose them in litigation in the later years.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
I'm now going to ask Dr. Chandrasekhar. Dr. Chandrasekhar, DC?
Yes,
Dr. DC.
Dr. Murali. Yes, Murali.
Yeah, I had a query from a practitioner who is in the suburb. He was telling me that he had a few case series of patients with endophthalmitis. And the patients ganged up on him. The patient's relatives ganged up on him. And immediately they went to the police station and reported that you have committed negligence. This is an infection and your hospital is not up to the standards. And I'm going to file a police complaint. So how do we handle this kind of thing as to a complication being considered a negligence? And how do we handle this kind of crisis in our practice?
So at the outset, thanks Murali and Dr. Nirmal for inviting me for this wonderful program. These things are happening across the country every now and then. Some get reported, some don't get reported. Now, what happens is once the patient, especially when a group of patients get infected, they catch hold of a lawyer or the lawyer catches hold of them, which I have seen personally. And
ambulance chasers, as they call them.
Yes, actually, the case goes like this, medical negligence, wrong surgery performed, loss of one organ, unlawfully kept in the hospital and so on. But even though they lodge a case, the case will be taken. This is the case of medical negligence. First and foremost, everybody should understand, without a proper medical team investigating with an expertise, no arrest can be made. That is where we panic. But in those cases, immediately is what we have done on day one, what we have done on day two will matter when once it becomes public, the investigating team will come after a week or two. By then your theater is totally gone and it is not clean. But no changes in the documentation should occur. But if you're managed properly, called for an expert and referral, if you do not have a proper retina specialist or expertise to manage, better to refer or get somebody to see and then refer. So these initial management, that should be one. And what we have as, all the statutory requirement, even if you have done everything right, we do not have a Clinical Establishment Act or we do not have your Pollution Control Board license is expired, then everything will go against the hospital. So ideal will be documentation from day one. And on day one, it is easier to explain to the patient and make them understand, even get a signature. And if your documentation is good and referral is good, and sometimes some clusters like Pseudomonas, they may not get back vision at all, but still it can save. But during the acute movement, it is very difficult to control the public and very difficult to control the media. They're all, they want more publicity, public center. So ideal would be from day one, do not panic. You have to work up for the hospital to see for a source and do not continue with the theater once a cluster occurs and manage the people properly. That's what I would advise.
We're going to take this further from your side, and I'm going to put in your request, a request to you and your team for giving us the guidelines as to how to handle a cluster or a case series or even an individual case of an infection, which bothers all of us when suddenly this happens, even in 1 in 1,000 or 1 in 10,000. This is what really is a crisis for most practitioners. So we'll evolve some guidelines as to how to handle it in a rational, at the same time, we remaining within the legal framework of keeping ourselves safe and not understanding that a complication is not negligence. Not all negligence is criminal, and a civil negligence can be challenged, can be proven that it's an infection and a complication is not negligence. Not all negligence is criminal, and only a criminal negligence can go in for an FIR and so on. Many of these things our practitioners, our fellow members don't understand. We like to highlight all of this in our the future newsletters and communication to all our TNOA members. And the other question I have for Dr. Nirmal, who's still staying with us for the last 2 hours, is that I think he has been a leader in terms of quality, NABH, as well as so many aspects of ophthalmic care. And so when we have something like a task related to IOL or viscoelastic or a balance all solution, which you're using in our practice, which is not under our control. So how do we handle a TAS episode? What are the legal implications of TAS? I think you have been aware of what is going on at the national level regards to TAS. Your impressions and your advice to members.
Yeah, thank you, Murli. So the last couple of years, we have been witnessing TAS or cluster end-off across India in at least once every fortnight. So many of them reported and many of them not reported. So the last incident of TAS which was reported, investigated, actually happened in Chennai, and so we could escalate it to the company and get it investigated. So AOS came up with the adverse event committee, and now the committee with the new president has we're trying to reform it. So Chandrasekhar is playing an active role in that, and so many of our members, TNOA plus AOS members, are part of it. So hopefully it will come into action soon. The main agenda of the committee is for reporting every incident. So this is what we have to request every member, right? Any incident, whether it is infection or reaction, and whatever severity or grade, it has to be reported. So in AOS website, there is a reporting format available. So there is a link to that. So it has to be reported. Second thing is the grievance mechanism available with the material-vigilance and pharmacovigilance department. So this is available to everyone. It has statutory implications, and once many such cases are reported by hospitals and doctors, then the statutory body itself takes due cognizance and asks the company to investigate and report it. So we have to ensure that every incident of either it's near miss or sentinel event or even a small reaction due to a drug to be reported. So irrespective of the severity, whether we are able to manage or whether we are going to refer it. So this would be the first priority. As for the investigations, depends on the type of reaction we get. If it is a cluster, it boils down to the associations have to take the lead and help the members. But if it is individual one-off event, the company has to help in the investigation by giving samples as well as batch reports. So they have to do due diligence and give the report immediately. As for the members thing is, I think already all the speakers have highlighted the importance of documentation, early recognition, diagnosis, and referral that we have to do on our part as practitioners.
Thank you, Nirmal, for very detailing this in all the aspects of this particular worrying aspect of practice. Because we do our best in terms of surgical skill and profession. We have the best machine, But when it happens to come to a small item like a viscoelastic or a poor quality IOL or something like that, and we end up with a major disaster, and the patient directly holds you responsible. I now invite in comments from Dr. Satyan and Dr. RDR. I think we have covered most of the topics which we intended to cover today, and we have exceeded our allotted time as well. So I think the discussions have been very interesting. I think we've been going on. Dr. Satyan and then Dr. RDR.
Thank you, sir. Apart from elaborate points, what you said in NMC and regulations associated with it, they had an additional point of pay. You can reject patients who have indulged in violence. That is one of the positives out of a lot of practice towards our medical thing.
Something like the airlines, we can have a no treat patient list. So
yeah, no entry or no fly.
Correct.
Something like that.
Actually, our association should develop an app, so which is open to everybody, every doctor and healthcare institutions, and it has to be reported. All right. So the moment a person is indulging in recurrent violence, so beyond like the level 1 to level 5, so incidents. So beyond third incident or fourth incident, they should be debarred from being treated in a private setup or something like that. So we have to push the government to, this is a good thing that has come out of this. Probably the only good thing that has come out of this NMC is this.
The second thing is all the medical practitioners has to move towards EMR within a span of 3 years. That not everybody can do it. We have to concentrate on people in semi-urban and rural areas who have been practicing there. So I think we have to represent that too in the form of a letter along with IMA or TNOA as an association. Then third is Act 48, what Dr. Senthil sir was mentioning. Clinical Establishment Act recommends or makes it mandatory to display Act 48 in every clinic or the hospital. It is need of the hour, and you have to display it in the most visible area, and if you don't display it, you are liable for a fine according to Clinical Establishment Act. So everybody has to be two things, and the recent DGP's notice about you cannot arrest doctor and just for that without a advisory committee or a consultant committee. So medical board. So we have to educate our people to display these notices and Act 48 in their notice board or or in a waiting area which is more visible, sir. So these are some smallest things we have to convey these messages to our members.
Dr. RDR, your final comments. And any comments from Dr. Sujata Mohan?
Yeah, I just have one question. I was just wondering, in case of trauma, very difficult cases which we are going to take up, will video consent play a role? Can we have a video consent? Does it have any legal liability, or will it be accepted?
No, the only legal validity for video consent today is only with the Transplant Act. That is a legal requirement as far as the Transplant Act, that the entire proceedings have to be video recorded. For a routine procedure, surgical procedures, consent is only an express consent, which means a written signed consent is enough. If you're going the additional length of recording it or video recording it, audio recording it, it is additional safety for you, but not a legal requirement.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. And we should
Can
also...
I add one point?
Yeah, please go ahead.
For telemedicine, video consent will be accepted as an explicit consent.
Yes.
For telemedicine alone.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
And for high risk also, when you encounter multiple surgeries or high risk cases with comorbidities, so with the consent for recording, we can do a video recording and have it as an additional safety mechanism.
Absolutely.
Madam, nowadays, even if you don't do it, patient will do it.
No, not recording the case. Is it recording? They should be able to understand what we are telling them. Like trauma cases, where the expectations should not be high. That is why.
Yeah, that is right.
Dr. RDR, sir, your final comments.
Yeah. Thanks, Murli. I think as a conclusion, I think we have to really appreciate Nirmal for forming this medical legal committee for TNOA. So what used to be an informal consultation between some of the senior ophthalmologists has become a formal process now, and he has laid out very clearly as to how people can approach that. I think we need to spread this awareness across all our members. I'm very sure that it will happen through the newsletter we are planning from this committee. The second is we talked a lot about consent. It's important, and equally important is the documentation process. The documentation process now it is becoming more and more complex. I think that's the only way we'll be able to do a good documentation is adopting a EMR that will suit your workflow. I think people have to look at it and adopt it over a period of time. That's how, and again, not only adopting the EMR, but really using it for the purpose of documentation becomes very important. And it also helps to upload all the images. That way, I mean, switching over to EMR, as Satya mentioned, in the next 2 or 3 years is very, very important. And we had nice talks about the standards from Dr. Sendil and also the consenting processes and indemnity, about which Dr. Madhavan also supplemented, how the IMA can help. So with all these things, I think we should be able to have a better hold on that, but still, I mean, having handled several cases in our organization, not only as we have a large volume, we also have a large volume of the medical legal cases, and you'll be surprised that at least 70–80% of that is from the free patients, not from paying patients. So, and you have to be prepared. Just because they are from the free section or camp section, you cannot afford to not document the cases. Now, only the documentation has helped us to go through all this crisis. But what we are not able to overcome is the compassionate outlook by the judicial system. Sometimes they are out of compassion, they tend to kind of penalize you for no fault of yours. I think that has to be something kept in mind and has to be addressed right from the beginning when you have a case involving children. So these are some of the comments. So, I mean, thanks again for this opportunity to be part of this deliberation today. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Nirmal. Thank you, TNOA. And
Thank you, sir. And so since the Joint Secretary is here, may I request the Joint Secretary to deliver the vote of thanks. Dr. Sharmila, please.
You're muted.
Dr. Satyan will be giving the vote of thanks, sir.
So one of the first webinars of 70th Platinum Jubilee TNOA year. Together we grow, together towards excellence. I thank our President, Dr. Nirmal sir, for initiating this out of the academic regularity towards a medical legal webinar. And I also thank our immediate past president and president-elect, past president Dr. Ramakrishnan sir, president-elect Arulmozhi Varman sir, and vice president Dr. Sujata madam, and secretary Sriram Gopal, and treasurer Balaji, and joint secretary, forgot your name. So I also thank our chairperson for this webinar today, Dr. Adiyar sir, and our medical committee chairperson, Dr. Murli Ariga, and other speakers for the day today, Dr. J. Sendil, Dr. Subhash Nivi. And it was an interesting section, and I more than ophthalmology and glaucoma, I love these topics, and it is very useful and need of the hour for any general ophthalmologist who general or specific specialty people who practice today. So I hope this session was very useful. I thank every one of you who participated in this webinar. Thank you all. Good night. Thank you very much.
Okay, smile for a screenshot. Smiling at 10 o'clock. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks, Dr. Nirmal. Thank you.
Thank you, madam.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you,
Thank
sir.
you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.